Folks, in exactly 3 weeks, Ohio State will be back on the practice field for the start of training camp. And by a remarkable coincidence, it is a Thursday on the beat. And we talk about 1, 2, 3 things. Birm, I just don't know how I can keep getting away with this.
I don't know either, but it's actually pretty remarkable. I wish it would stop. But I, as someone who makes it a point to try and do and say things to make you feel awkward and uncomfortable, I appreciate that you are consistent with this bit. I don't know how you keep doing it, honestly. I mean, it is impressive because I wonder, we don't spend a whole lot of time deciding what we're going to talk about on these shows, but yet you must spend a lot of time discussing
counting to 3.
Yeah. Like how can you equate it to 3 things?
I think I'll probably run out of ways at some point, and that'll be a sad day for me. But welcome to a Thursday on the beat. I am Austin Ward. He is Jeremy Birmingham. And as Birm mentioned, we don't talk about the things that we're going to break down. And I think that's for a good reason. Sometimes these 3 things Thursdays just take on a life of their own, especially if they're things that maybe we are annoyed with or ready to stop talking about. And since we're so close to the end of this offseason, and I feel like we should just call it right now because Big Ten Media Days are a week and a half away. Summer's over. It's time for football. So these are 3 things, Birm, that you're just ready to be done talking about. We're going to end it. We're not going to do it anymore. And for me, I'm just going to say that number 1, because I feel like you share it, is no more house settlement conversation, no more NIL talk. And maybe it's impossible for us to not have that conversation or for you to not have that conversation.
That's the problem.
But let's get to the point where we're just talking about games and depth charts and letting things settle out on the practice field and fall Saturdays where we don't have to worry about all the off-season shenanigans.
Yeah, I mean, I'm over it. I wish we could be done discussing this topic, but we cannot. And in fact, I would submit that we're very likely to talk about it more over the next few weeks as all of the conferences handle their media days, because every single conference, every single head coach, every single athletic director is going to be asked about it. And that started even on Wednesday. Really good article by Ross Dellinger on yahoo.com about the feedback that he was getting from Kenny Dillingham and other coaches in the Big 12. And it's the uncertainty, the lack of clarity, the problems that are still happening, the fact that they're like the wild, wild west, which was supposed to be eliminated essentially with this house settlement, feels even wilder and wilder west at this point, because there are now so many rules that people are breaking that they don't even know if they're allowed or how they're supposed to or what gray areas that it feels like an absolute mess. And again, I'm not here to try and tell people how to feel, but there's going to be more angst and irritation by Buckeyes fans probably on Friday when it comes to a couple decisions that get made for KJ Ford and JB Shabazz, the offensive tackle from North Carolina and defensive end from Dallas. But this is the way it's going to be. I really hope, and I'm going to try to link it in the notes if I remember, but the article from Ross Dellinger is really good. And a lot of times I think when we talk about these things, it comes across as sour grapes or just, serving as the mouthpiece or whatever for Ohio State or being homers. But there are 10 to 12 programs in the country that are just exploiting everything right now, and everyone else trying to decide whether or not they should follow the new rules, or if you follow the new rules for too long, are you going to end up on the outside looking in? Are you going to put yourself in a position where you can't recover? Ohio State is one of the few programs in the country that has a little bit of leeway, because if it needs to turn on the faucet right away, they can. Other schools are not in that position. Ohio State's uncertainty and irritation and frustration is not Ohio State's alone. It is a widespread problem, and I don't know that we're going to be able to stop talking about it, but man, I wish we could.
Yeah, I guess maybe it was just wishful thinking on my part. I mean, it definitely was. I was hoping to head it off because
these are 3 thoughts of things we are ready to be done talking about, not things we're going to stop talking about, right?
That's true. I guess I towed the line. I wanted to make a vow that I wouldn't, because one of the things that I'm going to bring up, I'm gonna do my very best to abide by that and not talk about it again. But I think it was because of what you mentioned with the start of Big 12 Media Days, which awesome by the Big 12 to do that at the first week of July so that there's actually plenty of runway after that, breaking up the content. Good for you. Tony Petiti, take some notes on that. But listening to Matt Campbell specifically, and Ross Dellinger's story was awesome. You make a great point. It's very well reported. It's in depth and explains a lot of the issues that we've been, hinting at, dancing around. Some apply to Ohio State in certain ways and some don't in others. But like the frustration that I'm having is if you're going to have these discussions and debates in public, and Matt Campbell is saying, hey, our top 20 players, they all could have gone somewhere else for more money. Right now, we're in a position where, as you said, sometimes it comes off as sour grapes. Sometimes it's just complaining, whatever. We cover Ohio State, and they are in a point of frustration right now. I think it's temporary. But they are not in a spot where their roster is going to be poached. But every program in America could say the same thing that Matt Campbell said. Our top 20 guys could have taken more money, or for Ohio State, their bottom 40 guys could have left for more money, however you want to put it. And it's our culture, and it's this sales pitch and patting yourselves on the back for it, because right now there's no clarity. A, as you said, there's no rules, but B, there's no transparency with NIL deals. There's no transparency with the salary cap. And I am not suggesting that I think teams should open up their books or players should have to reveal how much they are making directly from the schools. They're 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I don't want everyone asking what the salary is for these guys that are fresh out of high school. They're not fully professional, even if they are in a professionalized marketplace. I don't think that should be something that they have to deal with personally. But beyond that, like, there's no prove it. Like, if everyone is going to go out and say that, oh, these schools are paying this much, like, Iowa State's players are still not going out there and suiting up for free. They're getting something out of it, and they should. But I want to get to a point in the future, and I don't know if that's next year. I don't know if it's in 5 years. I don't know if it's in 20 years, when collective bargaining, when actual rules and restrictions on earning, when the salary cap and house settlement payments are more clear cut, and we can at least live in a world where we're having, I don't know, adult conversations about it, and it's not just wading through PR spin for the program. And I don't know. I'm tired of that already, and we haven't even got to Las Vegas because the Big 12 is doing this at the start of July, and I just don't know what the value is to it. We all know that there is no value. We all know it's bad. We all know it's bad. Like, I don't know what else they could say about it.
The only value is that when you keep something in the public spotlight, it's more likely to be remedied quickly. The best thing about all of this uncertainty is that it almost absolutely guarantees that the collective bargaining end of this, which is going to be the end of this, there is no other way around it. If college football is going to survive at all in its current state, the only way it's going to do it is by getting to the collective bargaining. And so if this frustration from teams like Ohio State or Clemson or Georgia are public and more vocal, then the faster that happens. And so this next 2 years, however long it takes for it to get to that point, it's going to be the end result regardless. So I just hope we get there sooner than later. And what we've noticed, or I've noticed in my time covering this team and seeing the other side of college football over the last decade, 12, 15 years, is when Ohio State starts to do something, then the rest of the country is going to be like, okay, let's change the rules. And I know Michigan fans feel the same way about so Ohio State, by attempting to box itself in the current new rules, is saying we're going to be patient. But as soon as Ohio State stops being patient, then all of a sudden the new rules will become moot again. And we'll see a push nationally to get to that CBA, because that's the only way it's ever going to be solved, is when these deals are public. And no, you don't want them to be. You're dealing with 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids. But this is what has to happen. Otherwise, you have just a complete lawless society, and you can't have sports without rules. Like, it's not doable. So whatever it takes to get there, and it's frustrating to hear about. I'm sure it's frustrating for fans to hear people like me trying to contextualize it all the time. But like, this is a problem that is ruining the sport, and people are still watching it. People are still buying NCAA Football 26, which comes out today for the masses. If you didn't pre-order, you should hop online and play that if you're bored looking for something to do this weekend. But these kids,
is that an invitation? You're going to be playing guys?
No. I mean, I'm just saying, it's better than going out of your house and seeing people.
Oh, true.
I just think that there is no way to avoid this conversation because it is permeating into everything that happens in sports. And you can say, and I agree, Matt Campbell's comments don't necessarily apply to Ohio State, but in some ways it does, because you have to remember it was 36 hours after the national championship game in January when Ohio State was having to be on the defensive to save players like Carnell Tate from being stolen by other schools. And because, so Ohio State is different than Iowa State in that if another program like Oregon comes in and offers a lot of money, the Buckeyes were in a position to counter, where Iowa State may not be. But it's not like it's not going to continue to be a problem. I mean, Hiro Kanu is not in the Ohio State roster right now because there was just different things going on with his ability to get paid. And that's the way the world works now. And so we have to figure it out. Ohio State thinks that they know the right way to do it, but if the right way results in continually losing recruitments and continually losing key depth pieces of your roster, eventually these coaches are going to say, I'm not at Ohio State to get my kicked in. You know what I mean? So they're going to have to figure out a way to adjust. And I don't know that it's easy, but yeah, man, I do wish we could stop talking about it. Anyway, right. What's the next thing?
I don't know. I thought that you would pick one.
I am tired of hearing about, and I know this is going to be somewhat trite, somewhat cliche. I am tired of hearing people assume Julian Sayin is going to be Ohio State's starting quarterback.
Oh, okay. That's a good one.
And I'm probably just guilty of it because I always say you shouldn't assume it. And then I say, but we all think it'll work out that way. But it is a competition. This is a Devin Brown and Kyle McCord type of competition. This is not a CJ Stroud and Kyle McCord competition or Justin Fields and Matthew Baldwin competition. This is a real competition to be Ohio State starting quarterback. And I, as I said, when we talked about the video game last week, I said that I thought that Julian Sayin would be rated 5 or 6 points higher than Lincoln Keenholz. I was dead on. Julian's an 85, Lincoln's an 80 overall in that game.
I saw clips of Julian Sayin throwing it 75 yards through the air to Jeremiah Smith.
He has a lot bigger arm than people thought. The bottom line is this is a real competition. And I think that there is, if we were able to do a full accounting of every player on the roster and we went down the line and said, who's your preference? Who's your preference to be the quarterback? I bet you it's almost 50-50 on the roster of who the individual players are throwing their weight behind. And ultimately those players don't matter. The coaches will make the decisions, obviously. But Lincoln Keenholz is a real dude. This is not a situation where he's not a competitor to Julian Sayin just because Julian's the more polished and more pedigreed quarterback. That is not as important right now as it would have been 2 years ago.
Yeah, I was co-hosting the Buckeyes show with Brandon Beam the other day and having this same conversation. We were asked about it, and the comments were, Julian Sayin is a beast, and it's crazy that I get it's July, but why are you still pretending, Austin, like this is a quarterback battle? And it's because of the battle that you mentioned 2 years ago that I believe that it is real right now, because I have put my hand up time and time again. I could have done a much better job. It's arguable that I did a bad job covering the Kyle McCord and Devin Brown battle. Even though I said Kyle McCord was going to win it, and ultimately he did, the space in between after the second scrimmage, if you think back to 2 years ago, and Ryan Day is saying, this is neck and neck, and there are days when Devin Brown is ahead and Kyle McCord is behind, and they're going back and forth, and you and I would have snap judgments, and I would say, that doesn't change my opinion. I don't agree. I think Kyle McCord's going to win it. It doesn't matter how it ended. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about probably not accurately covering it in the real term when it was going back and forth, which then maybe would have set more realistic expectations for the quarterbacks going into that season and the way that they played. So that experience has changed. If Ryan Day says something, I have enough body of work that I don't think he's misleading or lying about his quarterback battle. And also, you take what Ryan Day said coming out of spring, which is not just the same old practice 1 through 15 and practice 16 is on July 31st. It was, they've gone back and forth. This is a competition. There's no hurry to name one. And combine what was said with what we saw. And I've said this all summer long. There were 5 practices. That's not all 15. 3 of them were open in their entirety, and 2 were acclimation periods where we saw half of them. I think you agree with me. I think most people who got to cover and watch those practices would say that Lincoln Kienholz was the better performer on those specific days, 4 out of 5. And the 5th one was the spring game, and the largest audience saw that. And maybe that has colored the perception. Maybe the other 10 that we didn't see, Julian Sayin was absolutely dominant, and there is no reason to be having any of these conversations whatsoever. I am with you. The pedigree, the recruiting upside, the quick decision making, the release, all those things would point to you believing still that Julian Sayin may have the highest upside as a passer. But this is also, if we're going to say that it's like 2 years ago in terms of tightness of the competition, it's very much unlike 2 years ago, where part of my belief about Kyle McCord ultimately pulling ahead was that there wasn't a big difference between the athletic profiles of Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. I do think that I wound up being correct about that as well. But there is a huge difference about how Julian Sayin plays quarterback and how Lincoln Kienholz plays quarterback. And it gives Ohio State 2 different things to consider about how they want to operate this offense going into August.
Yeah. I think ultimately this lands on everyone being pissed off, in that I think you're going to see a hefty dose of both quarterbacks in that first month of the season. If you remember going back to the Devin Brown, Kyle McCord debate, there was a lot of discussion heading into the first 3 weeks. Like, okay, we're going to play them both. And then the Indiana game started the season, and Kyle McCord played pretty much every snap except for 3. And then Devin Brown didn't play. And then it's like, okay, well, it's Kyle's job because you got to get him ready for Notre Dame. And like, I think this year, because the way the season starts, you open with Texas. I think both guys are going to be used in that game because they do provide different styles. And then I think you have basically a month until you get out to Washington where you're going to let them have live reps. I bet you, and this is based on conversations I've had with people inside the program, things I've heard Bobby Carpenter say. I know for a fact that there are times in this spring evaluation period for the quarterbacks where the coaches were shaking their head going, I don't know if either of these guys are our guy. Okay. Like, and then there are other times when it's like, that guy certainly can do it. And then the next day it was the other guy can do it. And then the next day it's, hey, maybe they both have it. And then the 4th day again, it was like, I don't know if either of these guys have it. This was not lip service by Ryan Day. It is a real competition. And in my opinion, as we sit here on July the 10th, and I understand that it's folly to make predictions about what could happen 50 days from now, but I believe this is a competition that goes to the end of September, not the end of August.
Oh, wow. So definitely not something that we're done talking about.
Yeah. No, but I don't mind talking about the competition. I'm tired of talking about it as if it's a completed conversation.
Gotcha. That makes sense. You brought up Hero Canoe earlier. I would say that the third thing for me is, and I'm definitely going to be careful with my words here. The thing that I'm going to stop talking about is transfer portal and depth at defensive tackle, in trying to retroactively say, well, these were the decisions that were made. These were the evaluations. Ohio State tried to come up with something. They didn't find it. We got to be done with that part. Ohio State's roster now is set. And rather than talk about, well, actually the loss of Hero Canoe was a lot more significant than we thought, or what was wrong with these portal options? Could they have been more aggressive with this person over here? Why didn't they consider that? That part, Ohio State has made it clear what their decision was, and that is that they clearly believe in Jason Moore, Will Smith, Tywan Malone, Jarquez Carter. He goes in that group. We talked about him in the stock watch on Wednesday. That's got to be it going into training camp. It can no longer be ruining that Hero's not there or that they didn't land somebody from the transfer portal. And I think I can do that. I think we can stop talking about that. I think I can focus on the 6 guys that are here. And part of the reason that I think that will be easier for me, specifically Birm, is like I've started to think about Larry Johnson's tenure. And I think his reputation nationally has always been about tied to the Bosa's, tied to Chase Young and edge rushers and development there. I think his actual legacy is bringing along defensive tackles and maximizing their ability, not just 3 techs, not just like the interior defensive line play. I don't know that he gets enough credit for that, or if his reputation is inaccurate, because it's not just Tyleik Williams, it's not just Ty Hamilton, it's not just Devon Hamilton, it's not just Draymond Jones. You can go back. It's Haskell Garrett. It's also
Garrett, right.
Tommy Togiai. I think he has, under the radar somehow, that has been the best part of his resume. And so if Mark Pantoni, Ryan Day, and Larry Johnson looked at the options and said, and they all came to a consensus that there was nothing better, whether that's an outside the Woody issue or an inside the Woody roster evaluation or both, I think maybe, okay, we can be done talking about rotation or if the depth is there and start focusing on which one of those 4 guys or which ones of those 4 guys are going to make the leap starting on July 31st, because I'm betting that it's going to happen with at least 2 of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a point well made. The reality is that it's folly to rue something that Ohio State intentionally chose. Obviously, they didn't want to lose Hero Kanu when he left, but as you said, they had an opportunity in the spring to supplement the defensive tackle depth, a number of different players around the country, and that each had some interesting side stories and upside. And but the Buckeyes decided we're going to stand pat with these guys we have, and that only happens if they're confident that those guys are going to get it done. Because Ohio State is not the type of program that is willing to just rest on mediocrity. And if they don't feel like those guys were going to get it done, now Ohio State never wants to overpay for a freshman defensive tackle from Syracuse, for example, who made upwards of $1 million heading to Texas. But if it came down to it between, okay, we are confident none of these other guys can play, then Ohio State would have paid that amount. Like that's what they do. I mean, you got to remember, it wasn't but 3 years ago that Jihad Carter ended up as a transfer to Ohio State as like one of the one of the plums of the transfer class, because they were desperate at safety heading into the 23 season. So they're not desperate in their minds. If they were, they would have made a decision that reeked of that desperation. I think that there's probably not enough discussion about Tywone Malone and what we think maybe he can get in year 5 for him in college football. Like we have seen, as you mentioned, in Larry Johnson's legacy, like that year 4-5 jump for defensive tackles is pretty substantial. It's substantial anywhere, because you're now talking about a 23-year-old man who's 6'4" and 310 pounds, as opposed to a kid at 20 years old who's trying to figure himself out. So you should expect that to be a better performance. So I agree. I think that there's still going to be plenty of talk about the defensive tackle play, but talking about the guys that aren't there, or talking about mistakes or decisions that people perceive as mistakes in the last 9 months is irrelevant. So it's time to move on from that.
All right. Did you have a different third topic in mind that you want to squeeze in?
My third how do I say this without it sounding like I'm taking a shot at a player? So let me just put it, let me see if I can. This is about any player on the roster that's been there heading into year 3 or more that was a big time recruit. Okay. If they're not playing a lot, if they're not making an impact a lot, I think it's time to stop talking about the staff utilizing them wrong and maybe realize that player is not living up to their end of the bargain, as opposed to assuming the staff is full of idiots. And I understand it's the coaching staff's job to get players ready to contribute and to be that guy. But if there are roster management decisions that get made that fly in the face of conventional wisdom or recruiting rankings, it generally is happening for a reason. And it's not just because the coaches are stubborn and trying to prove a point. Like, they're playing the guys that they think are going to help the program win the most games. And so we've seen it a lot in the last few years with CJ Hicks at linebacker, and now we're seeing him in a different spot. If CJ Hicks was ready to go at linebacker in the last couple of years, he would have played linebacker. Like, if he's ready to go this year at defensive end and able to help contribute, he's going to make plays. If Jelani Thurman is ready to be the third tight end in this offense and really contribute, then he's going to be the guy given that opportunity. But if he's not, then it's probably because other people are playing better football than he is. And I think that that is a conversation that can go around a lot of positions on the team. Even Malik Hartford's in that position. If Jalen McClain is passing him up again this year, at some point we all have to go, okay, well, this is why. Like, This is why. It's not because the coaching staff is just choosing guys that are not going to help them win. Like, they have one goal, and that's to win football games. So what every decision that the coaches make is intended to help make winning football games easier. And you do that by playing your best players. So, after 2+ years in a program, recruiting rankings are irrelevant. They don't matter anymore. Like, they helped paint a picture of what to expect out of a player. But if you get to that point in their careers and they're not doing it, it's no longer about their recruiting ranking.
Yeah. I mean, when you get to the NFL draft, and everybody loves to point out how many 5 stars are here, how many 4 stars, how many 3 stars were picked. Like, it's not 100% for the 5 stars, and it's not 80% getting first round draft pick like that. You still have to go out and maximize it. That's an all-inclusive thing. Yes, the coaches are part of the development, a key part of it. Yes, the scheme fit may evolve over time. Maybe it's not ideal, but it is the weight room. It is the extra work. It's all those other things that come into play. And, that's ultimately going to be on the shoulders of the player to fulfill that level of potential. The other guys are all there to support that. And I think it would be very surprising. The coaches, that's their livelihood, is winning games. If they would be jeopardizing their income and their family life to just like pick favorites and not play their best players.
See, this is a problem. Like, we've all played sports, or most of us have played sports most of our lives. Like, the idea that coaches pick favorites and that's a problem is dumb. Yes, pick favorites. You pick the favorite is the guy that listens, the guy that practices hard, the guy that helps you win games. That's the favorite, and that's the way it should be. Like, that's a normal course of action. But, and I know I'm going to sound a touch hypocritical because earlier I'm talking about Julian Sayin and his recruiting profile. He's only been in college 1 year. Like, it's a different scenario. He has not had an opportunity to really been put through the rigors of the college life and have an opportunity to show off exactly what he can do as the third quarterback a year ago. Like, now is a different conversation. But when we're talking about players 3, 4, 5 years into the program, like, if you're not playing, it's not because the coaches don't know how to get the best out of you. It's because what your best is wasn't what we thought it was when you were ranked a 4-star or whatever. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird. I just think that, and that's hard for me to say as someone who makes a living in recruiting. Like, the recruiting stuff stops mattering after a couple of years.
It feels to me like there's going to be a lot of interest in you following up on that on a Freaky Friday, and we're going to have a mailbag version. So Birm has said his DMs are open. I will also post a thread on Letterman Row if you have signed up there.
And the Austin Birm Show at gmail.com.
And there you go. Give them that email again.
The Austin Birm Show at gmail.com.
And that will be also in the notes of this episode.
We do have some questions in there that have come in the last couple of days. We've got, people are sending it in. So
perfect. So we will have a mailbag. We'll turn the direction of the show over to you all. We appreciate all the support we've been getting on 10 TV, 10 TV Plus, 97.1 The Fan, and anywhere that you want to download the audio only on the podcast platforms. It's been awesome. I know that the summer months can be a little bit of a drag, but I'm telling you, 3 weeks away from training camp and 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks from Big Ten Media Days. We're there, folks. And so we'll see what all you want us to get into in that mailbag version on Freaky Friday. But this has been Three Things Thursday, a fun one. Sorry if we're complaining too much, but you know what? We want the offseason to be over. just as bad as you.
I'm not complaining. I just like interesting conversation. And sometimes I'm a bit whiny. But I'm not complaining. I like differing opinions. I think it's good that people want Ohio State to be great. Ohio State wants Ohio State to be great too. And I think that gets lost in the mix sometimes. That's all.
You're absolutely right, partner. So we'll be back at it again. This, again, has been The Beat on 97.1 The Fan, 10 TV, and 10 TV Plus. Thanks for joining us. He's Birm. I'm Austin. We'll talk to you later.